Thank you. I really am excited to be here and share this information with you. Expressive journaling is something that is really dear to my heart because it can really change the way you feel. It can change the way you look at life. It can literally change your life if you want it to. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to invite you into some little snapshots, just little bursts of expressive journaling exercises. So you'll want to have a notebook ready, just so it's all dialed in. And I've decided to frame this presentation through using the class that I teach. So that'll be the lens, interpersonal communication. And the goal of interpersonal communication is to strengthen communication competence, which means strengthen your ability to communicate in appropriate and effective ways. So what does that mean? That means having certain qualities and strengthening those qualities. Qualities like adaptability, empathy, ethics, having that moral compass of, is it the right time to say this, or is there a better time? And we're going to look at that through a few topics from the class. The first one in here, I'll show you the topics that we're going to look at. The perception of self and others, that'll be the first one we talk about, and then that'll lead us into language, and that will lead us further into emotions, my favorite, and then to dreams. And dreams really isn't a chapter or a topic in interpersonal communication. I think it should be. In some ways it is, but not a flat-out chapter. It's included, and I want to focus on that throughout this presentation too. All right, so first, perception of self. Expressive journaling is an ability just to write. You don't have to edit. You don't have to spell things right. You're just writing a stream of consciousness. It could even be making lists. It could be drawing to some extent and then writing about what you just drew. It could be a combination of sorts. It doesn't have to have any rules. I'm going to show you a few exercises to focus on, but other than that, it's just writing what you feel, what you're thinking about. It's meeting the page with a pen, paper, and getting to know yourself, giving yourself that reflection time. So one of the first things that we do in interpersonal communication is we think about who we are. And that's what I want you to answer now. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a list on the left-hand side of your piece of paper. Maybe 5 or 6 times you can write I am. And that's all you're going to write is I am. Those 2 words. And obviously you could write this more than 5 or 6 times. And we're going to spend about 2 minutes on it. Yeah. Perception, language, emotion, and dreams. Emotion? Yeah. So right now we're in that first part of perception of who you are. So does everyone have that list of I am? Here's the fun part. As fast as you can, you're going to finish each sentence. Don't think about it, just do it. You're brainstorming. Adjectives, nouns, whatever you come up with, I am. Fill it in. And you're not going to share it, so you don't have to worry about if anyone else sees it. Okay, so there we go. It's about 2 minutes. I am. So here's what you can do with that list. You can look at it. You can think about it. Just notice what you have written down, or you could look at someone else's, a friend's. But really, you're looking at the words that you're focusing in on. So what does that mean? Well, it means what you decide that it means. You can take one of the things and you can think about where it came from. How did this come to be? You can think about, do I want this? Is this what I want in my life? I mean, you can really consider what it would take to change that. And then just treat it as such and write about it and keep writing. And the answers will appear through writing, through this expressive journaling, that you take the time to think and write. Because, we think all the time. The brain's always going. But the difference between thinking and writing about it is that by writing things down, it's like thinking in layers. You're able to see the complexities of your thoughts. You're able to sift through the debris to figure out what is important to you, what's true, and perhaps what isn't true. Maybe you're allowing a thought to guide you and your decisions that isn't really helpful to you. So that's one reason, one exercise that you can do to just get to know yourself a little bit more. Because getting to know yourself really is a lifelong process. It's not just a week in interpersonal communication. It goes on forever, and you change and you evolve and then you adapt, and then you can revisit the I am list, reflect on it, and decide where you want to be. Another thing you can do through expressive journaling is to write a list of your strengths, your talents, and your skills. So here's another exercise, especially maybe those moments where your confidence is a little lower than usual, or you have to get ready to do something that scares you, to write a list of what are your skills, what are your strengths. And that could take a little reflection. It might even take a phone call to a friend if you're really stuck. But just making a list of all these strengths and then really looking at it and picking one to write a paragraph about. Just investigate a little bit further. Where did that skill come from? Where did that strength come from? Is that something I could do more with? Or is it fine how it is? We're just investigating who we are, the self, our perception of who we are, with these exercises. And it can be fun. I mean, you could invite a friend. And when we tend to work on focusing on the good things in us and figuring out who we are and getting a little bit more comfortable with accepting who we are as is, this beautiful thing happens where we get more accepting of those around us. So this acceptance of self can lead to acceptance of others. And that really brings us into the perception of others and how we view the world. I've started this off with an assignment, another exercise for you. And it's a little cut off, but it is No Complaining with DJ Prince. He's a student of mine who chose to not complain for an entire weekend. When I gave him the assignment to break a communication norm, he decided to break a communication norm of his, not just turn around backwards in an elevator or sit too close to someone at the movie theater. He decided for the whole weekend that he wasn't going to complain because he usually complains. And of course, I was like, oh my gosh, what a great idea. And what that did, and what my students continue to do with this assignment, is that it pauses the perception process, even just for a minute. Because you can't say the complaint out loud. You can think it, but you can't say it. So you're self-monitoring, you're self-aware of what's going on around you. But then you're also aware of what you're paying attention to. What stimuli are you choosing to focus on? What are you selecting? The lives go by, we have so much stimuli. What are you paying attention to? And by refraining from complaining, just even for a day, you really get to see where your mind goes. And then you get to practice slowing the process down, which I think is helpful for being in relationships where you care about the person. Because what we know about communication for sure is that it's irreversible. Once you say something out loud, it's out there. And the things that you wish you hadn't said are the things that that person tends to remember for, 10, maybe 15 years, maybe longer. So if there's a practice in thinking and writing that we can do to slow that down, to create a little more space, then it's fun to practice it. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to write just a paragraph for a couple minutes about your day. And start with the moment you woke up and just write about your day. Only you can't complain. So as you're writing, because sometimes the first thought when you wake up is, oh, I'm tired, I didn't get enough sleep. Well, you have to just think of something else to describe when you woke. I woke up and I had fuzzy sheets and I was warm. I'm so glad I have a comfy bed. And it's a little bit goofy at first, but then you at least have that choice to decide what to focus on when you spend a little time with another possibility, because our brains are a little bit defaulting to negativity. So a couple minutes writing about your day and not complaining in that paragraph. Super fun. Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you.
So this is one way that you can prevent negativity from hijacking your thoughts. And I really like how Martha Beck describes that, how negativity really can hijack what you're thinking about, which in turn connects with how you're feeling about things. And we'll stop there. I know, obviously, you know what, at home you can do this longer. You can take some time in expressively journaling about something in your day and practicing not complaining about it. And just notice how you reflect on your day and how it looks. Consider the possibilities. And considering the possibilities is something that our dear friends do for us. Which leads me to the next part of why expressive journaling is really helpful. Because no one's grading it, that's one reason, and it's just for you. And when you consider the possibilities of a situation, an event, it can relieve pressure and stress and just bad feelings. So I like to think about considering the possibilities like this. And this has to do with perception and interpretation. See, something happens. Someone's a jerk to you. And then you just stop and you consider, well, is this person a jerk? Or is this person just having a bad day? Maybe they're tired. Maybe they didn't get enough to eat. What's going on in their life? We do this with our friends because our friends aren't perfect, and we know that, and we're not perfect, and we hope our friends do this for us. When we make a mistake or we say something stupid, we hope that they see all of us, not just that one stupid thing we said, and we hope that our friends forgive us. And to be able to give someone else that room is really a good feeling. And I think the way to help do that is to remember that most communication is about the sender, not the receiver. For example, if someone says something to me, it's all about them, for the most part. I still strive to find that 5% where it really is about me. I think there's instrumental communication that is true. But if you think about the interactions you have with people, and let's say, you go to Subway to get a sandwich, and the person working there is frowning and kind of snappy with you. It has everything to do with them, not you. When you're in a relationship and someone says, I love you, that has a lot to do with them, the way they feel when they're around you. And I think if you can remember that, to just switch how you interpret messages, to remember that people are communicating who they are in most moments. It may be unintentional or intentional, but they're showing you who they are. And that's another reason why writing is so helpful, because you get through the layers to figure out who you really are, so that when the questions and the decisions arise, you can decide yes or no based on who you really are, not based on what someone expects you to be. Expressive journaling reveals that. It gives you time with yourself to reflect. It's almost like meditation, but you have it written down and it's out of your system. Another way to consider the possibilities is to look at language. And words matter. The meaning of words is within people and how we assign meaning. And what I mean by that, and how we see the world, is that you can think of a word that you grew up with. You think of your family, your first communication classroom, and you think of your formative years when you were little, and just reflect on what a word meant to you. And we're going to do this reflection in 3 parts. So the first one is trying to remember a word that you grew up with. I can give you a couple examples. The first example I have is from my dad. He's a hard worker. He has quite a work ethic. He never complained about work, and he would work all kinds of different shifts, and sometimes he would work 2 jobs, and sometimes for a short amount of time he'd be struggling to find a job, but he never complained about work. He never came home and complained about his day at work, ever. I never heard him. It was as if he was grateful to work. It was just part of who he was, work. Great work ethic. And then my mom, a word I got from her that has really shaped me, and I remember being little, is nature. She would always take us on hikes. She always had a garden. I always had to take things out to the compost. She would show up at the school and take us to a dentist appointment, which meant going to the beach. If it was a nice day out, she'd just pull us out of school. It was great. And so now, here I am, I'm grown up, and I'm thinking about, these are just 2 words. Obviously, there's more. There's more to my story. There's more than just 2 words. I'm choosing to focus on those 2 as examples. And you can tell when you meet someone what word they might be focusing in on. What word are they claiming as their story? And I'm just suggesting that there's more than one. But becoming aware of those words is really important, because they do shape the way you see the world. They shape how you interact with one another. So how about just a minute? I want you to think of a word that you grew up with, something that meant something to your family, something you heard from your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, grandma, grandpa, sister, brother, something that you remember when you were little. It doesn't have to be something someone would describe as good or bad. It just is what it is. It's just a word that you remember. And then you can decide how much time you focus on this part of socially constructed who you are through language, the study of linguistics. Some people spend their whole life studying it because they think it's fascinating. I think it has power and meaning. Okay, step 2. I'm just giving you flashes. Step 2, I want you to think of a word that describes you right now. I did this last semester, early in the semester, and the word that came up was busy, and I realized I was saying that word all the time, and people would ask me, how you doing? I'd say busy, and then I realized, oh my God, that sounds so boring. I'm so boring, and I had to change it. And I had stopped saying busy, except for now. I just said it 3 times. But I would get more creative, and that's how working with expressive journaling, it can create more words for you to draw upon instead of the same old word. I'm fine. I'm busy. So what's your word right now? And just write it down. You can write a little reflective paragraph on it later if you want to, just to figure out if it's something you want to continue or if it's something you want to leave behind. Okay, the next part. I know, so exciting. The next part is, what word do you want? What word do you want your life to be? I'll give you another example. A sweet student of mine in class the other day, because we were on the language chapter, he said outgoing. He said outgoing because he is shy. He said, I'm shy. I'd like to be more outgoing. That's my word. And so now, thinking of that word, those moments where he has choices, those opportunities to be outgoing will present themselves. He'll notice them because he's thinking of that word. It's kind of fun. It's an intention. At the very least, you can diversify your vocabulary, and that'll make it easier for you to adapt in other settings. Because one of the qualities of being a competent communicator is to adapt to different environments. And if you have more words to draw upon, it's easier for you to do that. And like I said, words evoke emotions. So that really brings us to, and that was my slide for words. I created this little iCloud out of words that an online class created. Each person submitted a word of how they'd like the class to be, and then I found this little thing online and we created a little word cloud. You can do that too. I was telling my class the other night, I'm like, you could take words you like and make a little wordle, a word cloud, and then make bookmarks. For Christmas is coming. They weren't as excited about that as I was, but I still think it's a great idea. So if any of you want to steal it, go ahead. You could laminate them. All right, so that brings us to emotions, because language evokes emotions. When you're writing expressively, emotions come up. It's a wonderful way to process emotions, which brings us to emotional intelligence. Daniel Goldman came up with this notion that it is a strong suit. It could be even more important than being smart and having knowledge about things. Being emotionally intelligent, what does that mean? It means that if I'm emotionally intelligent, that means I can identify, manage, and communicate my feelings in an appropriate and effective manner. Now, if you know anything about emotions, they usually stir something up. We have a physical reaction, we have an emotional reaction. So what I just said actually becomes really, really challenging, just to identify what you're feeling. We can see experiences where this is not happening just with going for a drive. Someone's angry because someone slipped into a lane and now they're going to show them. They're going to lay on the gas and speed around dangerously, and they're just going to be angry. They're showing their anger, they're not even managing it, they're just skipping right ahead to acting out. So what we want to do to be more competent in communication is slow that down and really sit with it and try to figure out, well, what am I feeling? Is it anger? Anger's okay. It's just a signal. Something's not quite right. Sit with it. Write about it. Process it. Is it sadness? Is your heart heavy? Are you disappointed? That's okay too. Be friends with it. What does it have to say to you? What kind of message is it bringing? Is it loneliness? Is it grief? When you sit with it and you write about it, then you can decide what you're going to do about it. But if you don't sit with it and you don't write about it, then it just kind of stays stuck. And somehow people just become a little bit numb to it. So being a strong communicator really means that you're able to identify, manage, and communicate emotions without hurting anyone else and without hurting yourself. And the next part that I want to talk about is the expressive journaling as a way to manage trauma or loss. And that's where the inspiration for this talk came from, expressive journaling, because of research that pointed to the process of writing just 20 minutes a day about how you're feeling this loss, yet having appreciation for the person you lost. Over the course of a couple weeks, people started to feel better just from writing. And you can see, I have a list on the left of the experiences from the research. People had a stronger immune system, less doctor visits, reduced levels of stress hormones. Those are things they can measure in studies. And it's pretty amazing. So when you process through writing, you're letting go so that it doesn't take up room in your thoughts, in your heart. And of course, more resiliency, which you can't see on this slide, but that's another finding from the study. Being able to bounce back from things that happen that may not be so pleasant. In keeping with emotion and those feelings, that brings me to forgiveness. Debilitative emotions are described as anger, sadness, bitterness, things that keep you from moving forward. And the thing I love about forgiveness is it's an opportunity, it's an invitation to let go of some of those debilitative emotions. And what it is, it's really just letting go of a grudge. So what is a grudge? A grudge is an emotional experience of those emotions that aren't serving you, that get stuck. And the really tricky thing is that the body doesn't know the difference between something that has just happened and something that has happened 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago. So when you're triggered by a memory or seeing something, those same emotions come up. The heart rate goes up. The same experience of the stress hormone being released in the body, you're rehearsing that. So you're rehearsing this emotion, this negative emotion, all over again. And what's additionally scary to me, as someone who teaches communication, and just as a human being, is that you're bringing all of this into a relationship in which maybe someone doesn't deserve that. So expressive journaling can help process these emotions. And with really the help of Louise Hay and a couple of research journals that I like a lot, I created a way to do that. And it involves, the first step is writing an inventory of all the people who have done you wrong. Just taking some quiet time to write this list of people who have hurt you, disappointed you, irritated you, let you down. A good sign for if you're holding a grudge is if you hear someone's name or see someone's name, you get that cringe, like, ugh. You feel that all over again. It's still in you. You're not in the relationship with the person, or you might be, but you still get that cringe, like, ew. It's still living inside you. And researchers on forgiveness say, allow for at least an hour of this reflection. We're just going to spend a minute. But a minute is better than nothing, and it really is an invitation. This is a cognitive experience where you're just kind of thinking through. We're not really inviting the emotional experience in. That takes more time, energy, reflection, perhaps even privacy. I'm not exactly sure if it could happen in a room with other people. It's something really just for you. It has absolutely nothing to do with the other person. I mean, sure, you're holding them in your hand, but they're not present. You're just keeping this memory enough to tell the story of what happened. So that's the next part. You write the story of what happened. And for some people, this goes on for pages. They write the story of how someone did them wrong, and that's a long process. For other people, it's pretty simple. He lied to me. And that's where it stops. So it really depends on the person. But going back to the research, right here, when you're writing this story, you're journaling about an emotion, an experience. You're facilitating this getting out of your mind and body and spirit. I will say that you're letting it go. Even just by telling the story, you're acknowledging that it exists. And some people can live their whole life ignoring something, but it still influences their communication with others and their feelings about themselves. So it's important to take the time with the story, and then that leads us into considering the other point of view. And I would say this might be a difficult part. This is where you have to let go of your lens of how you see the world, and you have to put on the lens of how that person sees the world. So you would be thinking about that person's self and how it was constructed. What words did they grow up with? What family did they grow up with? Really getting inside their head as much as you possibly can. It's a form of empathy. We call it dual perspective, other orientatedness, where you're looking at the world through someone else's view. And you're really thinking about it. And you might even start feeling. And that's where it gets into empathy, which is a quality of being a competent communicator. You can empathize with someone else's humanity. And is it easy? No, it's not. It sounds pretty simple. I have a list, 5 things, go for it. But it takes some patience with doing that. And you might discover things that you didn't think about before. Like when I go through this process and I think about it, it's really easy for me to focus on how that person's wrong. But then when I start writing about it, then I can see how I played a role in it. So there's some self-awareness happening. But that gift right there is that I can be free of this negativity. And then I can also think to myself, well, do I want to act that way in my next relationship? Do I want to bring those qualities in? At least I have the choice. I'm not repeating the same pattern over and over again. And then the question to ask yourself is why have you held on to the grudge? Some people hold on to a grudge because they feel like it's a form of protection. They feel like it's a shield protecting them from vulnerability. And it can really feel like that. But it's a false sense of protection. It's not real. You're still going to get hurt. Some people hold on to the grudge because it keeps them in this victim mode. You might have friends like this who are more comfortable complaining about a situation. They're just, nothing good ever happens. Poor me. I'm always alone. I never get the job I want. I'm going to be stuck here forever. I mean, that's really easy and it's comfortable. I kind of call it like this little lazy boy of victimhood. It's comfy. It's like, oh, because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to take responsibility. And that's the hard part, standing up and showing up. And when you think about why you hold on to things, sometimes it makes it easier to let go of it. And sometimes it just shows you parts of yourself that might not be pretty, but that you can definitely change and evolve from, just to be maybe a nicer person, maybe a stronger person, maybe a braver person, maybe more alive. I don't know. There's possibilities. And then finally, imagining how letting go of the grudge will affect your relationships with others. Because you definitely don't have to have a relationship with this person who has done you wrong and behaved badly. That's certainly, and you're not condoning the behavior at all. You're finding a way to let it go. Because when you still hold bitterness or resentment with someone, there's this cord connecting you to that person. I mean, you might as well still be together or still have a relationship. You might as well still be in the house because they're in your heart and they're in your mind. They're there. So letting them go frees you. So you could think of forgiveness as a form of freedom. It definitely invites more healthy relationships into your life and creativity and fun. When you let go of that stuff, you're just more lighthearted. You're easier to be around. I can't think of anything that's changed my life more. I don't think I would be with the people that I share my life with now if it wasn't for practicing this over the past 14, 15 years. Since I first learned about it and then practiced it, and then I was able to find academic research that backed it up, which makes it really neat, especially teaching academics. That's kind of important. I can't just bring in something that Oprah thinks is an aha moment and say, hey, let's do this. I really do have to have some good academic research to back it up. And with forgiveness, it just keeps coming and coming and coming. Do you have any questions about that? Because I feel like that's a big one. And with each of these items, it requires some time to really think about it, if you wanted to. I mean, clearly, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. But if you wanted to experience more creativity and a stronger immune system, if you wanted to sleep better, you could start to think about if you are holding grudges. And maybe that could be one way. And then in the end, you could find some gratitude for at least having that experience, because experience does build character. It shows you who you want to be and how you want to interact with others. And that brings me to my next point, and that's gratitude. This picture right here is from a student of mine, Emily, who, this is after class, she sent this to me. We were doing a gratitude journal in class, which all my classes have a journal, and we write down a few things we're grateful for every class period. And Emily has decided to keep it in her life, and she tweaked it a little bit, which makes it even more interesting. She created Post-it notes, and she calls them golden nuggets, which is another part of our class, but she liked the sound of golden nuggets, so now she'll write Post-it notes, and then she'll leave them around the house. And she decided to take a picture and send it to me, which of course, that was delightful to see. Gratitude. Gratitude is really the gateway to happiness. If you can figure out a way to be happy with what you have. There's studies that back this up too, which is delightful. So what I'd like you to do here is to write down 5 things that you're grateful for. You could do this every day if you wanted to. Or you could just do it once a week. The research that I really like with the study of gratitude is by Robert Emmons. And the groovy thing about the internet is you can search for him and you can watch little YouTube clips of him speaking about his research. I can sum it up real quick. He can go into more detail if you're interested. It's pretty fascinating. He's been doing this research for about 12 years now. And typically he has 3 groups. He has a group of people that will write about anything, whether it's positive or negative, just free writing. He calls that group his control group. And then he has a group that will write about hassles, like daily hassles. Things like, oh, I burned dinner, or parking, just hassles. They write down 5 hassles they've had throughout the week. And then a gratitude group that writes down 5 things they're grateful for, 5 good things throughout their week. And then at the end of the 10 weeks, he has different ways of measuring. He's a scientist. I'm pretty sure it's quantitative. But what he has found is that people in the gratitude group are 25% happier than the other groups. Exercise an hour and a half more per week. That's a lot. They have more clarity. They experience more creativity. They're able to problem solve easier, which actually sounds a lot like forgiveness too, because they're more optimistic about the future. They have less symptoms of depression. They're less likely to abuse substances like alcohol and drugs. So you can see that expressive journaling has a connection here. When you're expressively journaling maybe about forgiveness or debilitative emotions or gratitude, the same outcome keeps coming up. Happier, creativity, better sleep, more exercise. This connection with yourself, taking care of yourself and accepting and liking yourself enough to do these nice things. That's pretty amazing, because all of what I've talked about so far is free. All you need is some paper and a pen, and it doesn't even have to be a fancy journal. It doesn't have to be a fancy pen. You could probably find both somewhere on campus for free. And then you can start. I think it's pretty cool when you can find free things that make life easier. And then once you practice gratitude, it just gives you this feeling of being content and grounded And once you feel grounded and content, then you can start to reach for something else, which I call dreams. I call the stars. Intentions, goals, and self-fulfilling prophecy. People who write down their goals are more likely to have those goals come true. The intention we talked about with words. Your intentions could be bigger, they could be smaller, but setting the intention and letting it happen is a type of self-fulfilling prophecy. Thinking it, believing it, and then watching it come true is pretty magical. And then I tied in some more research of the top regrets of people who are dying. And this is by Bonnie Ware. She is a nurse that works with people who are dying. And over the course of years, she collected information about what are the top 5 regrets of people who are dying, which I think would be helpful, at least maybe for me, to think about in terms of writing about each one. For example, number 1, I wish I had had the courage to be true to myself and live the life I wanted, not what other people expected. In what ways are you living the life you want to? In what ways are you living what other people expect you to do? Is that true for you? I mean, these are the top 5. Do they ring true? And you can decide to write about that and investigate it. The second one, I wish I had worked more. I wish I hadn't worked as much. Yeah, I mean, who wants to work more? How can you work smarter, not harder? That would be a really nice reflection to see what comes up. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I can tell you that expressive journaling will lead to having the courage to express your feelings. Once you write it down, you're validating your own self, you're acknowledging yourself, you're identifying something. It'll emerge. And once you write it down, it gets so much easier to actually communicate and share and disclose to someone else. When it's all jumbled in your brain, it's really hard to communicate emotions. It's hard for most people to communicate how they feel. I study this stuff every single day, and it's hard for me to express my emotions. All you have to do is ask my husband. He's like, I thought you teach this stuff. And I'm like, I do, and I know it, but to practice it is so hard. It's like, wow, just you feel so opened up. So writing about it first, it actually helps organize what you want to say. And then you can kind of question yourself. Oftentimes, you might write about something like, I'm really angry. And then what you discover is, no, I'm actually really hurt. And then it just gets to the truth a little easier. And number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. Just a phone call, that's all it takes. And maybe even now you could reflect on if there's 2 people I want to stay connected with, who are they and how am I going to do that? That could even be one of the intentions or goals, just to stay connected with people who matter to you, who mean something, who make you feel good. And then finally, I wish I'd let myself be happier. We're surrounded with a lot of negativity. All you have to do is watch the news, read the newspaper, listen to people in the hallway. There's a lot, we're just surrounded by it. Everything I've been talking about to feel gratitude, write it down, to let things go, write it down, is actually counterintuitive to everything that's going on outside. It seems like gossip and complaining can be contagious and comfortable for people. And what I'm suggesting is that you let that go and look for something else. That something else will lead to more happiness. I mean, you know how you feel when you talk negatively about someone else or someone talks negatively about you. It doesn't feel good. It does feel good when you can figure out what you appreciate in your life, when you can let go of something that doesn't serve you anymore and appreciate who is in your life. Those things really do feel good. And once you start feeling good, then you'll be drawn to things that you want to do, instead of having to do the same things that you have to do. So that's all I have. I just wanted to share how to start writing in a way where no one's going to judge you, no one's going to grade it. It's just for you. as if you're having a date with who you are, getting to know yourself, and having something to share with others that makes them feel good too. So thank you for letting me do that.
Thank you.